Okay, good morning and welcome to this licensing and gambling subcommittee being held on Friday, the 18th of June, 2021. This meeting is being held remotely via Microsoft Teams due to restrictions in relation to COVID-19. My name is Councillor Walter Williams and I will be chairing this licensing meeting today. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. I will now carry out a roll call for attendance. Please can you announce yourself as present when I call out your name. Members first, please. Councillor Donna Cushing.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Diane Price.
Present, Chair.
Okay. Can I check the following officers are present? Mr. Lee Morgan, Licensing Manager.
Yeah, present, Chair. Good morning.
Morning. Keith Hopkins, Senior Licensing Officer.
Morning, present.
Oh, it's not Kath, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Todd Rawson, Solicitor.
Present, Chair.
Okay. Rebecca Barrett, Community Service Officer.
Good morning, Present Chair.
Thank you very much. Please, can I check the applicants are present? Mr. Wayne Brinkley.
Present, Chair.
And Mr. Steve Prosser.
Present, Chair.
I also have a list of responsible authorities and other personnel and local residents speaking at the meeting. Please announce yourself as present while I call out your name. Inspector Andrew O'Keefe. Gwen, please.
Present, Chair. Good morning.
Morning. Anita Dix, Licensing Authority as a responsible authority.
Good morning, Chair. Present.
Okay. Abby Brown, Environmental Health.
Present, Chair.
And Deb Lewis, Children's Services.
Present, Chair. Good morning.
Morning. Mrs. Whitehill, Local Resident. No. Can I also welcome supporting officers from committee services who are present in the background? Thank you all for confirming your attendance. Please can I remind attendees that if they lose connection during the meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. Committee services are on hand and we'll be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. Please can I ask everyone to keep their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak. I should also remind everyone that the chair has a discretion to remove persons from the remote meeting if that is necessary. If you wish to speak, please use your hands up function in Microsoft Teams. We now move to the agenda. Apologies for absence. No apologies. Declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interests in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Please use the hands up function to indicate if you have any such declarations. No. Item 3, Sports Ground Pavilion, Wattsville, Recreational Ground, Isline Road, South Lane, Wattsville. Mr. Rawson from Legal, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. Before members consider the matter before them, I'll firstly run through the procedure that will be followed for this meeting. The procedure that will be followed for today is that the licensing manager will present his report. All parties will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the licensing manager regarding the information contained in his report. The applicant will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of the application. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and his representatives, if any are present. Each responsible authority will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of their representations. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of each responsible authority. The local resident or other persons will then be asked to address the subcommittee in support of their representation. I know that the local resident is not in attendance at the moment, but that may change during the course of the hearing. All parties will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the local resident or residents. All parties will then have the opportunity to sum up. Please note that this should be a summary of any information you have already presented to the committee, and no new information should be introduced at that time. Please can I ask, if you do not hear a question or response, that you ask the person speaking if they can repeat what they have said. If you lose connection, we will pause the proceedings, and please make every effort to reconnect in the meantime. If you have any difficulties in reconnecting, please contact committee services who are with us in the background on 07768 095 152. So that's 07768 095 152. Once parties have summed up, the chair will then ask all parties to leave the meeting through the hang up button on Teams or the red leave button, and the decision of the subcommittee will be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days. That is the procedure for the meeting. If anyone has any questions on the meeting procedure, please indicate using the hands up function. Chair, I can't see any hands up. I'm going to pass back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Legal. I'd like to hand over now to Mr. Lee Morgan from licensing, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. Members, good morning and welcome to the applicant and also the responsible authorities this morning as part of this hearing. And the matter for consideration this morning is the variation of the premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003 in respect of Wattsville Community Group in relation to the sports ground pavilion at Wattsville Recreational Ground in Wattsville. Members, the matter that you will need to determine is perhaps best set out in paragraph 1.3 of the report, which covers what the proposed variation seeks. And the applicant seeks to increase their licensable hours, primarily commencing earlier than they currently have from midday, and also later on a Sunday. There's also additional provision sought on bank holidays. The applicant also seeks to increase their licensable area or footprint. Members will note that the current provision only permits on sales within the confines of their building and nothing else. So the application to vary seeks for on and off sales, which will then allow them to use the outdoor area that is specified. Members, there is also provision sought to increase the provision of live music until 0200 hours on New Year's Eve. You will see further reference to the provision of live and recorded music within the application, but where a premises holds a premises licence and is authorised to sell alcohol, then there would be a deregulation and exemptions provide for entertainment to take place between the hours of 8 AM and 11 PM, generally in any case. Members, the application for you this morning has been subject to the normal 28-day consultation period, which has brought about no representation comments from the Fire and Rescue Service and Environmental Health and Safety. And these are detailed within paragraphs 151 of the report. Representations in respect to the application have been received then from the police, the licensing authority in its role as a responsible authority, environmental health pollution team, and the child protection officer. These RAs have advocated conditions as detailed, which you'll find contained in the report. And you will hear from each of these very shortly, who will be able to confirm their respective positions for you this morning. The comments of the responsible authorities are summarised in the report at paragraph 1.6. You will also note that during the consultation period, objections have been received from 3 local residents opposing the variation. And again, paragraph 1.6 sets out their comments, and currently they are not present, but I would direct you to the comments that have been received, and they are contained between pages 35 through till 44 of the report, and within appendix 9A through till 9C. Members, you will hear very soon from the applicant, who will make their application to you, and I would add that their response at the moment to the responsible authorities and the comments that they've made as part of this process are set out at paragraph 1.7 of the report before you. 1.8 of the report, that details how you will deal with this application this morning and the matters that you will take into your consideration, which will include any verbal comments made to you by the parties during the meeting this morning. Paragraph 1.9 provides some comments or observations on the application and the representations for your consideration and for your assistance. There is, as you will know, a recommendation which is common to all reports of this type at paragraph 1.10. In this report, it details the officer recommendation, which details how any revised license would look should this be a determination that you choose to make, and an example of that would be that set out at appendix 10, which is in your bundle between pages 45 through till 48. However, at this point, you've not heard from the applicant or from any of the responsible authorities or indeed local residents. So you have the ability to come to any determination this morning of your choosing. Chair, for now, I will hand back to you in order that perhaps I can address any questions that you or fellow members may have. And if not, then this will allow you to bring in the applicant who can make their application to members this morning. So, Chair, back to you at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, licensing. Are there any questions of licensing, please? Use your hands up function if you have. No, nothing. Thanks so much. We now move to the representations from the applicant, Mr. Brinkley and Mr. Prosser. Could I ask you to address the subcommittee in support of the application, please?
Good morning, everyone. So our initial premise license we got obviously started at 7 p.m. each evening, and since then we've had a compound built out the back of the premise, as you can see in the document pack. And since COVID has lifted the restrictions and we can use the outdoor area, we realised that we didn't have a licence for that outdoor area, which come to a bit of a shock. But we've spoke to licensing and put this new licence in. We also had overwhelming community support for opening earlier, because people would rather come down early, have a couple of drinks, and then leave early. The support from the community has been overwhelming, and we're trying to get this through now. we've got over 200 kids within our football club that use the premises, and the parents have asked, can they come in for a drink whilst their kids are football training? And at the moment, we're not allowed to do that because the current licensing hours don't fall within the time of the football training. Is there anything you want to add, Steve?
Well, the reason for the earlier start as well as early as midday is just to give us that flexibility of possible funerals. At the moment, we have the European Championships on, which is, all right, it only happens every 4 years. But it just gives us that flexibility. On a normal Monday to Friday, there's no, we won't be open at 12 o'clock. It's purely to give us a flexibility because a funeral can happen any day of the year, any day of the week, really. So that's the reason for the 12 o'clock start. In reality, we probably won't open till 5 o'clock as the norm, but that 12 o'clock gives us flexibility.
I think that's it from us.
Yeah, just to touch on the of the people who objected, I actually spoke to one lady who's next door to either side, and we actually had a meeting on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, just a one-on-one, and it was very interesting. And she, the individual, was very understanding of our proposal rather than hearsay. So it was very good to have that communication. And she said she might even pop in this weekend. But one question I did ask is that when we have these temporary events licenses, which we've had 18 of them already, we've had the ability to play music up until 10 o'clock. And I asked the question, have you ever heard music after the hours of 6 o'clock, even though we have license to do so? And she replied, no. So what I'm trying to say is that just because the license is there, it doesn't mean we're going to carry it out. It's just that flexibility for any private party or, and any special event, really.
And just to add one more thing, for those who have objected, we would like to invite them down and have a meeting with myself, Steve, and the bar manager, so they know us and we can build a rapport with them. So if they got any issues, they can come straight to us. And that's all I have to add.
Yeah, that's it by me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Brinkley and Mr. Prosser, please? Show your hands up. Deborah Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I was just reviewing the plan in relation to parents being able to have access to alcohol should the licence be granted. Where is that situated in terms of the pitch where the children are training or would potentially have a football match? Would alcohol be brought onto the pitch or nearby?
Right. Yeah, that's a fair question. The compound fence which surrounds the outdoor area is a 2-meter high fence with a gate with a padlock as well. So anybody who would like to drink in the outdoor area would have to come through the building for track and trace purposes. But it also gives us full control of who's coming in and going out. So if they were to take alcohol outside the facilities, which is not within the license, they would have to come through the building, which they wouldn't, everybody would see them. So it gives us full control of who's outside drinking and where the drink is being consumed.
And who does that if your coaches are coaching on the football field, where parents would usually have responsibility and supervision of their children? It wouldn't be the responsibility of the coach, would it? It would be fall upon the responsibility of the parent. So who would monitor that?
In all honesty, we have children as young as under 5s, and we have children at 13. When we refer into the parents actually having a quiet drink while their child, we're talking about the 12, 13-year-olds more than the 4-year-olds. A parent wouldn't leave the side of the pitch.
I wouldn't just need to clarify.
Yeah, sorry, it was more of an overview, that comment. But it's more relating to the 12 and 13-year-old children rather than a 4-year-old child.
That's lovely. Thank you, Chair. Clarified what I wanted to ask.
Mr. Rawson, please.
Thanks, Chair. I understand that you've run a series of, was it 18 temporary events? Did you play live music during those temporary events outside? Oh, you guys are on mute.
Sorry, no live music was played.
Was recorded music played outside?
Yes. With our temporary events license, they were just purely Saturdays and Sundays. Where they may have been the odd Friday, but they were Saturday and Sundays, and there was background music being played. It's just for the selected people that were in the outdoor area at that time.
Just to give the panel a rough indication of what happened with the temporary events, what times on the weekend did they run outside? From when to when?
Well, from when we opened.
Yeah, we applied the license. The temporary events license would have covered us from 12 to 2300, but we were closing by about 2100 each night. That was probably the latest we went.
Yeah.
Because obviously it was outdoors, it got dark, cold.
And through the month of April, very little people were outside, if any, at 6 o'clock after the hours of 1800 hours anyway, because of the we didn't have outside heaters, so they all came inside.
During the temporary events in the evenings, did you receive any complaints or interventions or anything like that from anyone?
Not to my knowledge.
At this stage, are you planning to have live music out on the outdoor area if the variation is granted?
We have nothing planned at the moment for live music, but it's in the future if we want a local musician band to come down. Every year we run a tournament at the local village, the neighbouring village, a big six-a-side football tournament, and it's something we could do down at Wattsville, a mini version of a tournament to bring the community together and maybe have a bit of live music outside. Yeah. But at the moment, nothing is planned.
Yeah, so just on that note, I'm a bit more hands-on with the private party side of it. We have, dependent on the outcome of this hearing, we have many private parties penciled in from the hours of 12 till 3 every Saturday and Sunday throughout July and August. But any private party is just 12 till 3. The only reason I mention it, the only reason I'm bringing that up is that if there's a kids' party outside, there's a good chance that the music will be higher than when there's local residents having a quiet beer, for instance. But they're from the hours of 12 till 3 only.
Yeah, okay. What was the reason that you were surprised that you didn't have an off license when you looked to use your outside area?
I'll be honest with you, this was the first time I've had dealings with licensing, and I put the premise license application in, and I assumed if once the fence went up that would be covered.
Yeah, the compound fence was actually built in July with the help of the council, and the application for the first licensing did that get finalised in October, I believe.
Yeah, October.
So because the fence was done prior to the application, we assumed, wrongly of course, that the premises would be the indoor and outdoor area.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rawson. I have a question, Mr. Brinkley, Mr. Prosser. When you have the games for the youngsters and the training, do you put food on for them?
At the moment, no, because we haven't got the correct environmental health stuff in place. But there is scope to do that in the future.
Yeah. What's the attitude with the bar then? You know, if you have children, like you said, you got 4-year-olds and possibly 12-year-olds, and they coming in for burgers and after a game, is the bar going to be open?
So the food will be served outdoors. What we used to do down in NSD is we had a bench outdoors, and we served hot dogs and that from it.
And these child's matches are usually Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. So whether the outcome of this year in, the children would be come and gone prior to 12 o'clock anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Any more questions, please?
Yes, please, Chair, could I ask a question?
Certainly, Councillor Diane. Right.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's to you it is.
Good morning.
Is this the first communications you've had with your residents each side? You said that is it Mr. Brinkley I'm talking to now, because you said you had a meeting with the lady?
No, it was myself.
Are you Mr.
spend many
Brinkley,
hours.
sorry, or Mr. Prosser?
Mr. Prosser.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Prosser. Right.
No, it's okay. I've been down there many hours the last 12 months, and I see many dog walkers, and I'm always very unapproachable, and they discuss different things about they as far back as the compound area, and they said, can you make sure that we can walk out around, etc., etc. But it was the people who had objections were the ones I really wanted a meeting with. I love all the praise from all the other residents, and the way we communicate, they're happy because they know everything that's going on because they live close by. But this particular resident was one that were yet to come forward, so it was good to get her views for the very first time.
Yeah, the thing is, see, Mr. Prosser, when you sort of buy a place like yours, you have got great concerns because it is encroaching on your well-being as well, isn't it? But if you can get the residents on your side, you are laughing.
Yeah.
Because you always got to accommodate the residents as well.
Yeah. No, we have got 99.9% of them. It's just that there's a selected 3 households, I believe. And what I've done, because I have this point of contact now, I did discuss with her about having a meeting every month, and to discuss how we're going to go forward the next month. And we'll review the previous month, and we'll discuss on ways to improve going forward the next month, which was very interesting.
I like what you were saying to me. Thank you, Mr. Prosser. I like that.
No problem at all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions, please? Councillor Donna, question, please.
Yeah, Chair. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to bring this up now, but within the report, there was information regarding DBS checks and safeguarding training. Prior, I think, is it to the license actually being granted? So how many staff are you intending to employ? Are they all already DBS checked? And are they going to go on safeguarding training?
I'm very familiar with the safeguarding with the way I run the junior section. And many of our people who are involved with the clubhouse are actually involved with the football side of it. So they're already DBS checked. Many of them are DBS checked. We have been, have been new bar staff in the last few weeks, and that is on. They will have to go through the procedure. But yeah, I have no qualms about getting everybody DBS checked, as I do it as a weekly formality anyway with my football coaching and my mothers and toddlers volunteers and my youth club volunteers. So I am very familiar with the safeguarding procedure.
Right, thanks for that. It's just the fact that, like you said, you just got some new staff in, and obviously they're going to, if children are going to be interacting with this sports facility as it's headed, then all staff need to have the DBSs in place before coming into contact with not just children, but vulnerable adults as well. So, that's all I was concerned about.
What about the training? Do they do club training? Do they?
Yeah, the trainings with the serving alcohol. Yeah, all staff have gone through ALPS training as well, which is the alcohol licensing for, sorry, I can't remember the rest of it, but to serve, keeping an eye on serving underage people.
Yeah.
The 25 scheme.
Yeah.
But before they start working down here, they'd have to do that course.
Right. Okay then. It's just that being there, I used to be a youth worker, and I know that before I actually took on my post as a youth worker, I had to have DBS checks. It was a matter of course that we had annual training in safeguarding.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, lastly, just mention it, on that note, is that any new staff would have to be assisted for many shifts before we leave them on their own, you know, because we're very proud of what we're doing, and we have to have full trust in any new employee that comes in. So we would do the necessary checks before leaving them on their own.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
No
Thank you, Mr. Brinkley, Mr. Prosser. No more questions? Thanks very much. And I'll go to Inspector O'Keefe, please.
Sorry about that, Chair. I couldn't find the unmute button. Thank you, Chair. Just if I can, as a form of introduction, I'm Inspector Andy O'Keefe. I'm the senior officer responsible for licensing within Gwent Police. As you will note from your pack, a report with regards to any form of representations was completed by PC 328 Karina Williams. That officer is not available at the moment, hence why I am presenting at the hearing today. In light of that, I reviewed the report that my officer completed. I have also arranged for a site visit to take place again yesterday with further staff, just to confirm the conditions were still the same as when the report was completed. Having done that, we're aware that PC Williams put forward some recommendations with regards to what we feel is appropriate to be taken on board by the applicants. And also from that report, we're informed that the applicants have agreed to those conditions. And so as long as those are adhered to, then as the police, we have no objections to the application going forward.
Okay, thank you, Inspector. Are there any questions for the Inspector, please? No questions?
Yes, Chair. Sorry, I had to struggle with my cursor then to my mouse to get my hand up. Yeah,
Councillor Cushin, yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I have a question. Do you have, because I did notice anything in your report, or I might have missed it, any concerns about any additional antisocial behaviour in the area of Wattsville if the licence becomes extended?
With regards to, we review the application with regards to the licensing objectives, and public nuisance being one of those, to prevent public nuisance. If I can refer to the report that PC Williams put forward, with regards to antisocial behaviour, there is mention within that, I think it's point 5 of her report, an indication for the applicants to have clear notices displayed, advising customers regarding when they're leaving the premises in respect of consideration of local residents, and to be mindful of noise problems. There's also clear indication with regards to improvements on CCTV that would also then help to assist our officers that if there were further problems and it were related to the premises, then we would be able to gather any form of evidence regarding those individuals as well. So certainly we, and also if I go back to point 2 that of the officer's report, with regards to the premises supervisor and managers and other competent persons shall manage the outdoor area to ensure that customers do not behave in a noisy, rowdy or offensive manner. So the officer completing the report did assess those issues, and there are measures that she put forward with regards to mitigate some of those problems.
Yeah, I did actually read that in the report. It was just what my concern is when they sort of outside that premises where the responsibility ends then for the licensees, whether might you consider that there might be additional antisocial behaviour when they get out onto the main thoroughfare of the streets? Or haven't you given that consideration? It's just around the actual building and the compound itself.
We would review the application in regards to if we have any objections, and certainly if we felt that, or if we do start to get increased reports regarding antisocial behaviour, then certainly we would look at that against whether that is connected to the premises. What I would say is, same as many other towns, villages that we cover, what tends to happen is that even with antisocial behaviour, they tend to use a licensed premises as a geographical point, and people will say it's because of so-and-so premises as the cause to the problems. Certainly, any increase in antisocial behaviour would be reviewed by ourselves. If it is deemed that we feel it's related to the premises, then our next course of action would be to speak to the applicants to discuss what and if there are any further support they can provide to us to reduce that option. If it continues and it is directly connected to the premises, then we do have the option to look at evidence then regarding a review and bringing it back to the panel as we would do in a normal process.
Okay, thanks for that. It's just I'm a resident actually on a main street where we have a pub at one end and a pub at the other end of the street, and people tend to sort of go past my house, and you tend to hear them being quite noisy in the night and everything, usually way past midnight. But I'm a type of person who doesn't go to bed till late anyway, so it doesn't deter me too much. And if there is anything, I'm also a type of person who'll go out and confront them or phone the police straight away anyway. But it's just that I have concerns, that's all, especially for the residents living nearby. Thank you very much for answering that. That does clarify things for me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee Morgan, you had your hand up?
Thanks, Jade. Just the inspector has helpfully provided for obviously an explanation as to how the police would deal with that, and just generally as a point, then it's covered off within sort of the statutory guidance and also then the council licensing policy. And I think there's a recognition that beyond the immediate area surrounding the licensed premises, the control that can be exerted over individuals diminishes. But the inspector has clarified that for you, Councillor Cushion. So I'll end at that point there. So thank you for the opportunity for coming in. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And no more questions for Inspector O'Keefe? No. Thank you, Inspector. Thanks very much. And I'll hand over to Annette Dix to make her representation, please.
Yes, good morning all. I'm the Assistant Licensing Manager for the Licensing section, and in that role I act as the responsible authority for the Licensing Authority. In relation to my report, which I will refer to at Appendix 6, pages 27 to 28, you will see the representations I've submitted on behalf of the Licensing Authority in its role as a responsible authority. You will note that in my report that following receipt of the application, a joint visit was undertaken by both myself, my colleague from Environmental Health and the Headley Gwen Police, and discussions were held with Mr. Brinkley, who was a member of the community group as the premises licence holder. Given the nature of the application and its close proximity to residential properties, however, the Licensing Authority has advocated a number of conditions, in addition to those submitted by other responsible authorities, to control the use of the outside area, which they have applied for, which is the external compound that has been referred to at the rear of the premises. In addition, given the terminal hour for the supply of alcohol is the same as the opening hours that have been applied for, the Licensing Authority have recommended a condition in accordance with point 5 of the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy for a 30-minute drinking up time to assist in the gradual dispersal of customers, all of which are listed in my representations attached to my report. Licensing Authority, however, does have some concerns regarding the extension of hours on bank holidays, bearing in mind its close location to residential properties, and would advocate that these hours are reduced which are again recommended in my report. It's my understanding that the applicant has agreed to my representations, and unless there are any further questions, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. Are there any questions for the licensing authority, please? Councillor Cushin?
Sorry, me again, Chair. Right. The only question I got asked, where you said about the outside activity is not to go beyond 2200, and then further in the report it said about the drinking up time. So at 10 o'clock in the night, people have to go inside, and then they will have a license till 11 o'clock, and then they'd only have 30 minutes then to vacate the premises. Is that right? So dead on 10 o'clock then, there should not be anybody left outside in the compound area or whatever. They should all be inside at that point.
The recommendations of myself and fellow RAs is yes, that's correct. The outside area shouldn't be used after 10. Anybody then who wishes to stay would then go inside, and then obviously the supply of alcohol they've applied for then is being applied for at the same time as their opening hours. Once the supply of alcohol is terminated at that time, then people should be leaving within 30 minutes as opening hours are not a licensable activity. Hence the reason why I've recommended this condition.
Yeah, and the onus would then, based on your recommendation, the onus then is on the licensees then to ensure that these people aren't outside after 10 o'clock in the night.
That's correct. If the licensing committee were of a mind to approve the application today, then yes, that would be a condition to which the premises license holder would have to adhere to. The same with the condition in relation to a 30 minutes cooling down, drinking up time.
Yeah. If they breach those conditions, if that's the conditions we decide on today, if they breach those conditions, then there would be sort of come back then by the authority then to sort of negate their license, is it?
That's correct. The breach of conditions of license is an offence, and also if that is a continual issue and where other avenues have been explored, then a review of the premises license could be instigated, as the Inspector O'Keefe has referred to as well. Should a premises license holder not adhere to the conditions or there are continual issues, then a review of the license could be applied for.
All right, thanks very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Brinkley and Mr. Pross, if it sounds like I'm being all negative. I'm not. I want to get across to everybody the importance, whatever happens, to adhering to the licensing conditions that we set out. So I don't mean to be negative. I just want clarification for my own well-being and to emphasize to yourselves that you know you have to adhere to these conditions if it's granted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cushin. Councillor Cushin, any other questions, please? Okay, thank you, Mr. Dix. Environmental F next, please. Mrs. Abby Brown, can you make your representation?
Good morning, everyone. Basically, pollution control, as you know, are a responsible authority. We shared similar concerns with colleagues in the licensing authority and Gwent Healthy Police in relation to the outdoor areas in particular. We know that with the lack of any sort of noise mitigation, any large congregations coupled with live and recorded music within that area could be problematic, not just from a licensing perspective, but under sort of legislation that we deal with under the Environmental Protection Act 1990. So with that in mind, I attended a meeting with colleagues to speak to the applicant at the time on the 18th of May to underline sort of concerns, to say that obviously if you have any type of activities, especially when you are going late into the evening, with regard to recorded music and live music, that it could become an issue, even though you are adhering to the licence. So it is not something that should be taken lightly. We did attend one of the temporary events on the 14th of May. The weather wasn't ideal. It was raining, but I can confirm that there was no outside activity at sort of 9 PM when we visited. So the way we feel that we would like to control this going forward is to basically sort of support the RA licensing authority recommendations to stop any outdoor external activities past 2200 hours to sort of alleviate any potential noise disturbance at the moment, but obviously this would be subject to ongoing monitoring. We didn't receive any service requests up to this point in relation to any noise disturbance. So going forward, providing that these conditions are sort of added, we have sort of no objections to any sort of consent granted today.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Ms. Brown, are there any questions for environmental health, please? A show of hands. No questions. Thank you very much. Deborah Lewis, please. Children's Services next, please. Mrs. Deborah Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Deborah Lewis. I'm the responsible authority for safeguarding for the local authority. My report can be located in Appendix 8, pages 33 to 34. You will note from my report that I've made some recommendations. They set out recommendations in relation to staff training, approved proof of age scheme, and those selling alcohol being vigilant to ensure that it's not purchased or provided to those under 18 years of age. Pleasing to note that the applicants have happily accepted those recommendations at this point. So providing they are adhered to, I have no objections to the application. In addition to that, I've read obviously the licensing report this week, and I'd contacted our front door, our safeguarding hub, which is the front door for the local authority, the information advice and assistance team, just to inquire if we'd had any increased referrals for antisocial behaviour within the community. At this point in time, there are no additional reports of any antisocial behaviour at all within the area of Wattsville. So I'm pleased to report that, there's nothing to report in that area. So providing, as I say, the licensing, the objectives are adhered to, I have no objections to the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Are there any questions, please, Mr. Lewis? No hands up. Thank you very much. I'd like to go now to Mrs. Whitehill, but I don't think Mrs. Whitehill is present, the resident.
That's correct, Chair. The resident isn't in attendance. You can move on.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there no further questions? I will now ask all parties to sum up. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can see the hand up now. Yeah. Mr.
Chair,
Lee Morgan.
thank you. I suspected I might have been next in any case, but just in the interest of balance, I think, and I know that you would have seen the comments of the residents, but I'm just conscious was they have not attended today. There have been relevant representations received during this process, and I would just guide members then through those. I think I did mention them earlier on in my earlier submission. I believe that the representation from local residents are contained within pages 35 through to 44 of the bundle. And if that's not the right page, I'll clarify that in a second. But just for you, and I'm sure you have, and the fact you referenced the residents, Chair, you would have read those, and we'll take them into account, in coming to your determination. So it was just that point there, Chair. And if you allow me, I'll get on and go to my summing up. I think is it me first, or is it to the applicant?
Yes, that was the next step, and you are first. Yes, if you could.
Right. Okay.
Sum up now, please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair. I think I'm grateful to the responsible authorities for their comments this morning. It's been helpful. What I would do in summing up, though, is just bring members back to the report, and I would just take you to page 7 and the last 4 paragraphs in that report, which again has been highlighted by the responsible authorities in relation to obligations, in relation to the licensing objectives. that are met, but also any conditions that are attached to the license will also be or continue to be met by the applicant. I'd like to reassure any local residents, albeit they're not present at the hearing today, that and also to remind the applicant really that comes a license comes great responsibility, and there are protections which are available to local residents, which, subject to them being evidence-based, and where there is evidence that the licensing objectives are not being met, as has already been mentioned, things could be applied for equally can be taken away. And it's on that basis I would, certainly remind the applicant, and depending on how members determine this application today and any conditions which may or may not be applied, they need to be aware of these conditions and ensure that they are met going forward. So, Chair, there's no amendment to the recommendation for you following the submission this morning. So I would guide you to the recommendation in paragraph 1.10 of the report. And Chair, thank you for the opportunity for summing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. There's no, so we go down to Inspector O'Keefe. Summing up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I could just make one point before we move on. I know it's just to clarify something I picked up in the report. Councillor Cushing asked the question regarding the use of the outdoor area after 10 o'clock. And I think it's just important for all the people to be aware. If we refer back to the environmental health report, it does state within there'll be no consumption of alcohol in that area. But it is accepted that they would be used for smoking, but it would be monitored with regards to antisocial behaviour. I think it's just a point to raise, as I am aware that residents may see people out there and they may question why they're there. So certainly it's a case that that is allowed within the guidance then, that there will be a smoking for the purposes of smoking, but it's controlled by numbers. And it certainly is a case of that it should be monitored regarding antisocial behaviour. I
did actually read that bit. There's a maximum of 5 people are allowed in the smoking area at any time after the 10 o'clock. I did note that. It was just my concern was more than 5 people if there was a mass of people. That's what I was trying to get across then to the potential licensees.
Yes, thank you. It's just that I think from a policing point of view, it's for the general members of the public to manage expectations of what the conditions are on the applicants. Certainly, as I've stated with the report that I've covered, from a policing point of view, I concur with Lee Morgan with regards to the fact that there is a responsibility on the applicants and their staff with regards to how they manage the premises. As has been stated, they need to be fully aware of the conditions and what the expectation is. And from a policing point of view, that if we do find that local residents are feeling that there are issues connected with the premises, we will work with you to try and address those issues. And we would expect cooperation with regards to that. But as has been stated, it is a case that if the recommendations are not followed, then certainly there are further action that can be taken with regards to bringing it back to this panel for reviewing of license. But as I've stated, if those conditions and the recommendations that have been put forward are followed, then we are happy with this application to go forward for consideration by yourselves.
Thank you, Inspector. Thank you very much. We'll go now to Mrs. Dix.
Hello. I haven't really got much else to add other than what's in my report. Obviously, I would also mention that the licence that was issued to the Wattsville Community Group has only been in place since October of last year, and due to the current COVID restrictions and those previously, obviously, where we were in a much tighter lockdown. They haven't been able to open. So, of course, a lot of the usage of the premises is untested. So that was taken into consideration when I made my representations. And for that reason as well, that's when for the outside area, for it to be restricted till 10. Obviously, there are exemptions in the Live Music Act, and we are getting to the point now where live music is permitted to a point. But I would just ask, the licence holders to consider these matters when they are, if it's granted today, when they are organising events. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dix. Can I ask Miss Abby Brown, please, the environmental health to sum up?
Yeah, just to echo the comments by Gwent Headley Police and the Licensing Authority. Obviously, for pollution control, there is a slight conflict with exemptions under the Live Music Act and the Environmental Protection Act 1990. We have put these controls on due to the control under the Licensing Act 2003. However, obviously, if we find that through receiving complaints that noise within these areas are unjust under either legislation, then we would be able to take action, either under a review of the premises licence or the separate legislation mentioned to curtail or even take away the provision to have anything outdoors at all. So just to again echo what has been said and concerns aid by responsible authorities to encourage responsible management of the premises going forward should the licence be granted today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Can I ask Mrs. Deborah Lewis, please, Children's Services?
Yes, thank you, Chief. Thank you. I don't have anything additional to add other than to ensure that with regards to the representations of the responsible authorities put forward to ensure that all staff are aware of those and their expectations, and should any safeguarding concerns become apparent, we obviously got a duty to investigate those. So it's just to let them know that. But I don't have anything else further to add. Thank you.
Thanks very much. There's no residents, so we'll go to Mr. Brinkley and Mr. Prosser to sum up, please.
I'd just like to thank everyone at Licensing for their guidance. Again, we're going to work hard on speaking to the neighbours and trying to build up a good rapport with them and work with them. So any concerns they have, we can squash them straight away. That's it from me.
Yeah, all good from me.
Very good. Thanks very much. Thank to everyone attending today for the representations. Legal, please.
Thank you, Chair. In a moment, the Chair will ask all parties to hang up and the subcommittee will retire to discuss the application and the representations that they've heard today. I'll be there to offer legal advice and the committee clerk will also be present. The decision of the subcommittee will then be circulated by the licensing department within 5 working days of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Legal. Thank you all for attending and a good day to you. Can I ask all parties to leave the teams, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Press in the hang up button. Thank you very much.
Thank you.